There was a boy.
Mario Boggs stepped out of the car, stretching his arms as he took in the warm summer air. The countryside was bathed in golden light, the scent of pine and dry earth thick in the air. He had been driving with his friends all morning, exploring the winding back roads, when he spotted the small wooden saloon he knew well, standing alone by the roadside. The sign above the entrance, painted in faded letters, simply read Black Raven. In that place, he had been known as Johann Newton for several years. He also had his own stein there, with his alias name Johann written on it. Smirking at the Wild West aesthetic, Mario decided to stop for a beer. He made his way onto the wooden porch, his boots creaking against the aged planks. A few patrons sat outside at round wooden tables, enjoying the lazy afternoon. It was a Wild West-style place, complete with swinging doors, Indian chief portraits on the wall, and a porch lined with high chairs. Intrigued, Mario parked his car and walked inside. The saloon was dimly lit, with a long bar, a few tables, and a radio speaker playing a faint country tune. He also saw an old friend, a nice Navajo girl, Yanaha, brave. Mario went to the corner of the saloon for a moment to listen to music with Yanaha and reminisce about past moments that flooded both of their minds.
Then I'll order a beer and take it out to the terrace, where the sunlight spills over the wooden planks.
Then Mario nodded at the bartender through the open door, ordered a cold one, and sat down, savoring the cool drink and the peacefulness of the countryside. But as he glanced around, his eyes landed on a figure sitting at the far end of the terrace. As he turned to find a seat, his gaze froze on a figure sitting at a nearby table. The young man had reddish hair, and he wore a leather jacket that looked suspiciously familiar. The sight sent a chill down Mario's spine. The teenager was like him, himself at 16.
The teenager was like me, myself at 16.
Mario stood still for a moment, beer in hand, trying to process what he was seeing. The younger version of himself leaned back in his chair, sipping a soda and staring at the distant hills. His expression was one of restless confidence, the kind Mario remembered so well. He knew that look. He had worn it before, back when the world was full of reckless dreams and unmade choices. Tentatively, Mario walked over and sat down across from his younger self. The teenager looked up, narrowing his eyes slightly, as if recognizing something familiar but not quite understanding why.
Mind if I join you?
Sure, just killing time.
They sat in silence for a moment, the sound of birds and distant wind filling the gaps. The older Mario took a sip of his beer, gathering his thoughts. Should he say something? Warn his younger self about the mistakes to come? Encourage him? But what if this meeting wasn't meant to change anything? Instead, he simply asked,
Where you headed?
Dunno. Thought I'd just drive till I found something interesting.
Yeah, I remember doing that.
You from around here?
You could say that.
You too. Yeah, take care of yourself. Well, I should probably get going. Lots of road ahead. The two of them talked for a while, trading stories about places they had seen and roads they had taken. One speaking from experience, the other still yearning for adventure. Eventually, as the sun began to lower in the sky, the younger Mario stood up, stretching his arms.
Then, just like that, he was gone, walking toward a dusty old car parked by the roadside. Mario followed, but when he stepped inside, the boy was gone. He watched as the vehicle rumbled to life and disappeared into the horizon. He sat there for a long time, finishing his beer, wondering if the encounter had been real or just the work of a tired mind. The bartender looked up and asked if he wanted another beer, as if nothing unusual had happened. Mario sat there, the silence settling around him like a heavy blanket. The waitress came by to clear the empty soda bottle from the table, and when Mario asked where the boy had gone, she just gave him a puzzled look.
Ain't been no one else out here but you, mister.
He finished his beer, paid his tab, gave a kiss to Yanaha, and walked back to his truck. The sun was dipping lower now, casting long shadows across the field. As he gripped the steering wheel, Mario felt something shift inside him. A flicker of that old restlessness, that hunger for more. He didn't know where he'd go next, but for the first time in years he wanted to find out. But when he got up to leave, he noticed something on the table where his younger self had sat, a small crumpled receipt. He picked it up and turned it over. In familiar, messy handwriting, 3 words were scrawled across the back.
Keep going forward.
Mario smiled to himself, tucking the paper into his pocket before stepping off the saloon's porch and heading back to his car. The road ahead seemed just a little bit clearer. Mario left the saloon that day with a strange sense of clarity. He didn't know if what he'd seen was real or just a trick of his mind, but it didn't matter. The message was clear. Life was too short to play it safe. The saloon faded in his rearview mirror as he drove off, a small smile tugging at his lips. Maybe the kid was right. Maybe it wasn't too late to fight for something. Some years later, Mario had quit his job and was traveling through South America to Patagonia, working on the novel he'd always wanted to write by his alias name Johann Newton. He often thought about that day at the saloon and the boy who had reminded him of who he was and who he could still become. And sometimes, on quiet nights under the stars, he wondered if that boy would ever find his way back to the Black Raven, just to say thank you.
Saturday, all done with work for a week. I've been sleeping too much, so I hear. I had me some Pop-Tarts and bacon for breakfast. My blood pressure's way up to here. I came into this world with nothing at all but a cry and a smack on my rear. I lay in my cradle and bawled a while till Grandpappy fed me a beer. Friday night headed to Tops for a burger. The manager's happy we're here. We're off to cruise Penn Street. He'd like to come with us, but his boss won't